welcome everybody. Good afternoon or good morning. So my name is Philip Patton, and I would like to guide you through today's topic of the clinical competitive landscape. But before we do that in a live demo, I would like to first explain a few of the principles, what we try to achieve here. So it all starts with data. And as you know, or if you are familiar with the domain, we have a number of data sources which allow you to search on clinical trials, clinical trial registries. One of the most important ones is clinicaltrials.gov, which is managed by the FDA, and it allows you to find information about clinical trials which are conducted in the United States. Next to that, you also have the EU Clinical Trial Register, which is managed by the EMA. Again, same type of registry, but the data is represented in a different way. And there is also an overarching clinical trial registry, the International Clinical Trials Registry platform, which is managed by the WHO, which is overarching 14 different clinical trial registries. There are many more clinical trial registries, but we focus here in today's demo on these three. What we do is, first of all, try to retrieve the data. That's already, for some of these resources, a challenge. But we also try to make it possible that you can do an aggregation and a mapping of your data. So what it means is that we recognize, and the presentation went a little bit too fast, but the principle is that we will recognize overlapping clinical trials so that you see, okay, this is something which is happening in two different clinical trial registries or in a duplicate registration because the clinical trial is conducted in multiple countries. So trying to bring similar data together is a piece of information. What we also do is we try to make it possible that you can tap into the different clinical trial registries and that we try to align that data. Aligning means that we try to recognize what are the concepts, what are the different properties. And next to that, we go one step further. We try to also create linked data. Linking data means that we try to map to existing references, classifications, or ontologies where possible. A few examples are here: conditions, which are represented, for example, in a classification, in a hierarchy, or phases, which we try to align, sponsors, and therapeutic areas. But it's beyond that. It's just a few examples. By doing so, we are able to allow you to, in an intelligent way, filter the data, but also create links. That means that you can go to one of these concepts and see all the related data, or you're able to filter on that. What is the result of that is that we create a knowledge graph. A knowledge graph is represented here as a connection between different data types. So it's a lot of information which is brought together, but here you see the overarching knowledge graph of the different data types. What it means is that all these different data types are defined in different data sources, and that you see relationships among each other. It's quite complex, but if you zoom in on what we call here clinical studies or clinical trials, you see that this icon here is connected to a lot of other different data types. That's what it means. Clinical studies are connected, for example, to literature, to active substances, and to many others. By doing so, we're able to do this filtering, but also this navigation. Next step, if we have such a knowledge graph, is how to apply this in a software application. And this is the core essence of DISQOVER. On the top, you see what we call our public DISQOVER. The public DISQOVER is an aggregation of different public resources that we use in our data ingestion engine, which is an integral part of the DISQOVER platform. What we do is we tap into these different data sources and we create a very extensive knowledge graph. This knowledge graph is publicly available via our user interface, but we also have a more technical approach where you can access, for example, the knowledge graph via the API or as a data dump in RDF. This is a semantic representation of the data. That's the default offering we have. This is an open access system, but the true value that we try to bring is by allowing you to install DISQOVER locally in your private cloud or on-premise, where you have all the freedom to integrate the data you want or tap into the related data sources or enrich with the related data sources that we have in the public system. And these are the last two different types of connectivity. The first we developed was federation. So what it means is that data federation allows you to make a synchronous link between the knowledge graph we manage and the knowledge graph which can reside on your system. That means that we can bring together internal data plus licensed data sources. And in this case, if you think about clinical studies, it could be, for example, Clarivate Analytics data like Cortellis or Informa data or Elsevier data or many others licensed data sources combined with internal data. This is integrated in your local data ingestion engine, and you build a knowledge graph. So in a synchronous way, this federation taps into directly in the existing knowledge graph and enriches your data on different aspects. If you would like to have more power or more capabilities of working with our data or the data we manage as public data, you can also use our synchronization or caching service. We call it RDS. This allows you to subscribe to these data sources and integrate them directly in your local data ingestion engine. This allows you to do more powerful integrations, mappings, and work with the data. The ultimate goal is that you create your own environment with your own dashboards, your own use cases that you can solve. This is the core essence of DISQOVER. So what is the result of that? Why are we doing this? So it's all about being able to easily search in different data sources, for example, the different clinical studies here, allow you to filter the way you would like to do that, depending on the different properties or filter criteria, and then find the subset you're interested in, and then see where the comparison could be done, where you can see additional insights, where you can follow links. Ultimately, you would like to also take decisions or actions on top of that. So that means that you would like to have the possibility to look to your competitive environment, or that you would like to follow specific links to get insights on a new finding, for taking decisions on in which direction you would like to run your research, or you would like to think about new parts of research. There are multiple possibilities here. So I'll switch to the demo. So I will stop with my presentation here and activate my web browser screen. I hope you can all see this. Potentially, I will just quickly check if everything is still working. Yes, I'm still logged in. So I'm just jumping back to the start screen. And let us go into a first use case. So I maximize here my screen. This is what you see if you log in. This is a customized environment. So this is showing you how you can work with the data, and it's not the public data sources alone. It's a customized environment where we made a snapshot of some of the data just for the purpose of this webinar. Before I go into a practical use case, I would like to quickly show you how it looks. So here you see an overview of the data sources we have on the system, and you see in this column, location. If I click here on location again, I filter for in order that I see the in-house, the local data sources, and so we loaded on this system some of the data sources which are interesting here in the context of clinical trials. The result of that is that we have an ontology graph, which is the combination of these public data sources and these local data sources. You can also see here the contribution of every individual data source in the whole system. So every data source is contributing to a big or a small part in creating links, in creating data types. So let's go back to here. So just for the sake of this demo, I created a few direct links to some of the clinical study information. And what you see here is if I click on this first button, is an overview of clinical studies, a dashboard tailored from the direction of therapeutic areas, starting with therapeutic areas. So what you get here is the number of results which are available, 600,000 different clinical studies. You also see the individual clinical studies on the right. So this is an eternal scrolling page. And then you see here the therapeutic areas depicted, a lot of other filters. And you will see also that the system is quite responsive. If you click on a certain button, you will see that there is an immediate effect on everything. So assume we are interested in the therapeutic area of oncology. This is the top level here, and you see there are still some missing clinical trials which are not added to the therapeutic area. This is work in progress. What we mainly have here are disease-centered or disease-oriented therapeutic areas. So technology-oriented or specific techniques-oriented therapeutic areas are not included at the moment. Immediately, the moment that you click on oncology, you'll see that the filter is reducing to the number of 75,000. And you also see immediately what is the historical overview of clinical studies which have specific sponsors. This is a historic overview because this is ranging from still when the database started to include the registrations to up to now the freshly added clinical studies which are in a recruiting phase. What I would like to do is allow to combine, for example, different filter criteria. So let me go a little bit deeper. So you see here some visualizations which can help you, but I also added some additional filters. Additional filters which can help me to narrow down to the sub-level I'm interested in. For example, I'm interested in phase 2 and phase 3 clinical trials. Just for the sake of completeness, I also take the phase 2-3 clinical studies. So this is immediately reducing the number of results. I'm not also interested in all historical clinical studies. I'm interested in the ones which are currently running. For example, the ongoing clinical studies and the ones which are just started or about to start, the recruiting clinical studies. So this allows me to filter down my results and allows me also to inspect what is all available here in this overview. So I have 11,000 clinical studies. But actually, I'm interested not only in oncology as a therapeutic area, I would like to combine this with neurology. So what I just was doing was clicking or selecting different filter criteria. I also have the possibility here to select a specific combination and say, okay, I would like to use an and restriction. So it has to be and in neurology and in oncology. And you immediately see the activity, the result of that you have here, brain and other neurological tumors. So we end up with 363 different results. You're able to link all this data in different ways. So you have a possibility here to allow you to link the data or follow the links, so you can go into the details. But I would like to show you one additional feature here first. I'm interested in a very specific type of clinical studies because I would like to see if there is a certain exclusion criterion that I could exploit here. I'm interested in clinical studies which have an exclusion criterion of a specific kind, immunosuppression. So I'm going to this property search. This is a specific filter criterion that you can add. And I'm going through the different types of properties I'm having here. And I take here for exclusion criterion, immunosuppression. So by doing this, I'm heavily reducing my results. And I find here only 2 resulting studies. If I click on that and I take a look to the details and I scroll down in the results, I see here exclusion criteria. There is somewhere in this description the term immunosuppression. So this helps to direct my search to find specific subsets of information to really help with the more detailed searching. What I would like to do now is I would like to go to another aspect of this data from another point of view. So let me go back to the start screen. But before I do so, are there any urgent questions or things which are not clear to people? Please raise your hand. My colleagues are monitoring or checking also all the questions. If there are any urgent questions, please inform us, and I can stop here for a sec or go into a specific question. If not, I will start with another aspect of what I would like to show, and then you can always have the possibility to raise your hand or ask questions. So we're back here at the start, and you also see here the overview of all the data types we have. This is quite extensive. This is for the sake of the demo to demonstrate how much is available. You definitely can restrict that view if you have a specific use case or if you would like to help people to have a very directed way of searching the information without seeing too much clutter. So I will show you some other possibilities. Assume that we are looking for a specific disease. So I will type non-small cell lung carcinoma. Non-small cell lung carcinoma can be abbreviated as NLCLC, but you see that the system automatically recognizes this as this is a disease. If I click on this plus sign, you also see that we list up all the different spelling variants of the disease. So non-small cell lung carcinoma can be described or written in different ways. We can add these to extend our search. So this is going much broader now, and this allows us to search in many different directions. Let's go back to clinical studies. So I clicked on another sign of clinical studies just to see another type of dashboard. Another type of dashboard which is customized or pre-customized before as a preparation here, but it allows me to also look from other angles to the data. So what I would like to do is zooming in on, for example, the studies which are recruiting. Not recruiting ongoing, but recruiting in phase 2. So I have my phase 2 studies, and this is already, again, a nice filtering of my data to 988. And I'm actually interested in following this type of data. So that means if any new recruiting studies in phase 2 are included or are starting, I would like to get a notification. Or if any phase 2 study stopped recruiting and is actually started, I would like to know that. This is a completely new feature that we recently released in our 6.10 version of DISQOVER. You see here this button watch that elevates this search to a higher level, which means that this is now becoming a watched dashboard. A watched dashboard allows you to review that data the moment, or that the system reviews the data the moment the data gets updated. So what you get here is that this watch dashboard is now activated. And if I click on show the details, you see my current date here in my local representation, my current date and time, and I see that I have 888 studies. So the moment new stuff comes in or data is removed, I will get a notification. It could be via email, it could be in the application or another medium. So let's go, and I will just go further. Let's go back to the use case itself, and let's take a look, for example, to what are the different sponsors that we have available here. I will stop because that's a watch dashboard. I will stop watching this dashboard because I would like to continue. So let's say that I'm interested in specific studies which are conducted by Pfizer. So this allows me to filter. So I was just filtering the overview. If I click on that, I will narrow down my search. But I can also just say, okay, not interested maybe in looking to the detailed information about these clinical studies. I would like to, and that this is like a side jump, go to the concept of Pfizer. So what we are showing here is linked data at work. You see the concept Pfizer as a company, but you will also see all the clinical studies which are connected to that concept. And in addition, we also have some information about patents. We have a small group of people that we have identified, which are Pfizer, related to Pfizer. This is work in progress. This is because we only use a limited number of sources to extract that type of information for the moment. So let's go back. This is just a side jump to show that you can also take broadening searches and then go narrow back, or can return back to your search of interest. Another thing I'm interested in, this is a number of studies here, but I'm also interested, for example, in the related publications. Why? Because I would like to see, for example, if there are any key opinion leaders which could be interesting in this concept, in this context of clinical studies. So my 988 clinical studies are related to 780 different publications. I'm clicking on this button, and what I see now is a new dashboard because I'm going to a new data type, clinical publications. Just to show what the flexibility is that you have to add different types of information, I'm able, for example, to select here journal title and change, for example, this visualization and see immediately, for example, the publication type. I'm selecting this because I'm looking for senior researchers who are authors of review articles. So I'm narrowing down my research, and I get 113 different results. In my top author list, I see here that there is a certain person which is collaborating, which has a lot of, which has one of the top number of clinical studies or of publications. I'm sorry. What I would like to do is go in more detail to this Sarah Burdett and see what is her publication record. So I see 33 publications. If I click on that, I can get to all the publications of this person, can see her collaborators, co-authors on these clinical studies. And interesting to see also is that if we take a look to the 33 different publications, that non-small cell lung carcinoma is quite prominent in the keywords or in the terms which are associated to her publications. So 17 publications have this association. So it could be that this person is quite into that domain. You also see here on the left that I have a navigation pane where I can go to different dashboards and also to the previous dashboard. So I'm just clicking on the second dashboard to go back to my previous screen. If I go back even more, I go back to my clinical studies. Just another insight that we can retrieve from these clinical studies is, for example, taking a look to the different countries where the studies are conducted. So I have 988 different clinical studies. I see here some information about the countries, but I can also see how the different countries are collaborating. So I'm just opening a new, that this was a button, I was clicking here on this button, opening the dialog to go to a new widget or to activate a new widget. And I'm interested, for example, in the registered countries, and I would like to show this in a specific way as a multi-state course diagram. So these are the different representations possible, and I would like to see how are the different countries collaborating. So just on the fly, I can get some insights on who is collaborating with who. And here you see that there is not so much collaboration between the top countries which are in these selection of clinical studies. Few of them collaborate with the United States. At the moment I select another term, for example, I'm going into also the ongoing clinical studies. I also see here that I have more results and that more collaborations are now up. So this is on the fly, switching and investigating the different data. Let's go to a last demo. Again, if there are any urgent questions so far, please raise your hand or ask your questions. I will stop for a moment, otherwise I will continue. If not, allow me, no questions, allow me to go to a third case. This is quickly to explain you what the flexibility is of also working with hierarchies. So I'm searching for multiple sclerosis. So multiple sclerosis is a neurological disorder. I'm not directly linking now to clinical studies, but I first go to the concept of disease. Why I'm doing this? Because I would like to see what are the clinical trials in the neighboring disease area. So I'm not specifically zooming into a therapeutic area, but I'm interested in the neighboring disease area. So you see, I search for multiple sclerosis, and we have different representations and subtypes of multiple sclerosis, but there are different classification systems. You only see a few here. And we have MedRAS, NOMAD-CT, MESH, etc. But what is interesting here is that I can, for example, open this tree and go into demyelinating diseases, for example. Say, okay, I'm interested in the 7 diseases which are linked here to as a top level or as a higher level of multiple sclerosis, and I started with a search. If I now remove my term, my search term, you will see that everything reruns and that I have, instead of 7 results, now a little bit more. These are all the demyelinating autoimmune diseases, which are related to multiple sclerosis. So they are quite close to the concept of multiple sclerosis. What is now interesting that I, in one go, can go to all the related clinical studies. So I'm not touching only multiple sclerosis, I'm also touching similar kind of diseases. And what is now interesting is that I can, for example, filter again, let's say, show me phase 3 clinical studies, show me all the recruiting clinical studies, and then I could take a look, for example, to the treatments they are using. So if I have a link here to the clinical studies here, recruiting phase 3, and in addition, I would like to see the ones which are quite recently started with recruiting, because sometimes you have a status which is not up to date. So I say, okay, I would like to see the ones which are in the recent 2 years, 3 years added as a recruiting clinical study in phase 3. This allows me to search for 32 different related active substances. And so I get here an overview in a new dashboard of active substances. Okay, the data is loading. And if I scroll down, I see here some interesting molecules. And I can take, if I'm not zooming over them, some interesting molecules which are, I just need a sec to scroll through that. I had one in mind to pick out. So I don't see it immediately popping up. It's just loading.
In the meantime, there is a question from the chat. So
there is a question from the chat. Yeah. While the data, because it seems to be, I'm a little bit deviating from the chat. I will take first the question.
Yeah.
Give me a sec to open my.
The question is from Rana saying, are there any reports already created for market analysis for any indication?
Yeah, good question. Thank you for that question. So quickly rephrasing if that was not clear enough, are there any records already created, pre-created for market analysis? No. It's something you can do quite easily yourself if the data is available. But we definitely can assist you in that, in making that as easy as possible. But also first scoping what are you really looking for if we have all the content that you need. But it's something that you can see as a kind of a live document. If we create a certain dashboard, it's like constantly up to date, and you can export all the data if you want to do that. But allow me just to click on one of the results here. I will not go into too much detail on this. But what you see here is a single active substance. You see with, and I haven't touched on that, color codes of the different data sources which are contributing. So we were focusing here on clinical studies, but now you see that clinical studies are related to active substances, for example, if they are testing a certain compound or drug. And here you see how all this data can come together. You see here synonym terms, but also identification terms, information if that is available about pharmacoeconomics or indications which are registered. And this allows you to search in a broader way. It also allows you to return back to clinical studies and approach clinical studies from the active substance side. So this is in a nutshell, in a not maybe so small nutshell, an overview of some of the functionalities of clinical studies. I will stop sharing my screen for now. I'm at the end of the demo. And please, if there are any questions, use the chat function or use raise your hand, and then we can take these questions.
There is one question from the Q&A. Rana again.
Yeah, Rana, you have another question, so I will phrase it again. If there is any data regarding market size for any indication. Not at the moment. We don't have any public resources which are directly tapping into that, but that's a matter of availability of data. Other questions?
There is a question coming from the audience also regarding the integration of private data. How easy it is to integrate private data into DISQOVER?
Yeah, thank you. So the whole idea of what we do here is trying to align different data sources. And if you have private data, it's all a matter of fact of getting access to that data and see together what is the data model you would like to apply to tap into your private data. So private data is not an issue if you have a local deployment of DISQOVER. whatever that means. Local deployment could be in your private cloud or on-premise. And then you can, or if you don't want to, enrich that data, or if you would like to enrich that data, tap into the public data we already have available.
There is another question from Rana on the Q&A. Can you please show us an example regarding
A medical device?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I will start presenting again. So what we have here in the system is we also have, and I just have to look where it's shown here, medical devices. So if you are interested in medical devices, we have the global unique device identification database from the FDA. And so this is at this moment, single source that we could use. And there is, the industry is already waiting for some time for the data source, which will come from the European Union. But you see here a few filter possibilities of data that we could tap into from this resource. So this is an overview of existing or registered medical devices. I hope, Rana, this is going in your direction, or if you are interested in clinical studies related to that, we can immediately go into that. But you see here that you have some filtering possibilities to say, okay, I would like to, for example, say, okay, this is not an over-the-counter product. It's a single-use product, for example. And you see that you can quickly filter for different types of registered medical devices in the USA. So Rana, is that going in the right direction, or would you like to see some information about a medical device? No more questions. We are also at the top of the hour almost. So I don't know if other urgent questions are here. We lost some time with the technical hiccups, but please raise your hand. Otherwise, I will go back to the presentation for the last part of this webinar.
Great, ladies and gentlemen, thank you. This brings us to the end of this webinar. I'd like to take the opportunity to thank our speaker, Philippe Patin. I'd like to take the opportunity to thank Natalia for hosting the webinar. And of course, you. Thank you very much for joining and for your vivid interaction during this session. The webinar has also been recorded, and the recording will be made available to you after the webinar, and also as an on-demand webinar at our website. As said already, any additional info regarding other use cases related to clinical trials or linked to other phases in the life science value chain, we invite you to have a look at our website, ontoforce.com, our social channels, or even better, go to the community version of DISQOVER at discover.com, create your account if you don't have it yet, and experience DISQOVER for yourself.